So I will be presenting my study, Marijuana Liberalization and Drinking Behaviors. So the research question driving this study was, do increases in marijuana liberalization increase rates of alcohol abuse or dependence and binge drinking? Proponents of liberalization claim that it reduces problems associated with drinking alcohol. They often justify this by linking liberalization policies with statistics like decreases in alcohol sales. But in order to get an accurate picture of marijuana liberalization and its effects on the most harmful aspects of drinking, you must compare it directly with those harmful drinking behaviors. The previous literature is actually split on the relationship between marijuana use and alcohol use. Some research promotes the idea that marijuana acts as a substitute for alcohol. One study showed that marijuana sometimes costs less than alcohol, which would be an explanatory reason for why people would substitute it. And another study showed that counties with legalized medical marijuana experienced a 12.4% decrease in alcohol sales. Other research promotes the idea that marijuana is a complement to alcohol. One study showed that medical marijuana laws increase rates of binge drinking for individuals age 21 and older. Another study showed that veterans with alcohol use disorders engaged in heavy drinking on the same day as marijuana use. So, as you liberalize marijuana, you would expect rates of use to go up. So the relationship between marijuana use and alcohol use is going to be really important for this study. And this study will hopefully shed some light on the nature of that relationship in terms of policy. So next, the hypotheses. So the hypotheses for the study were kind of broken down into two different subsets, with each subset broken into three different age brackets. Age brackets were important to include because, as kind of discussed before with rates of binge drinking and medical marijuana laws, where they saw an impact for 21 and above, there was actually not an impact or a different impact for younger ages. So we've seen that marijuana laws have different impacts at different ages. So firstly, the study hypothesizes that in comparing states, those having a greater increase in marijuana liberalization will be more likely to have a greater increase in the rate of alcohol abuse or dependence in the past year for ages 12 to 17. And then this hypothesis is repeated for ages 18 to 25 and 26 and above. Next, this study hypothesizes that in comparing states, those having a greater increase in marijuana liberalization will be more likely to have a greater increase in the rate of binge drinking in the past month for ages 12 to 17, and then again repeated for ages 18 to 25 and 26 and above. So let's talk about the method. The independent variable was broken up into four policy categories, ranging from the least liberal to the most liberal policies: illegality, medical legalization, decriminalization, and recreational legalization. So the 50 states plus DC, so we have 51 cases, were coded from 0 to 8, with each code increase indicating a greater degree of liberalization. Something important to note here is that you might think that, the jump from, as in 6, illegal to medical and decrim is, would be a larger jump than actually the highest coded 8, medical to recreational. But a change to recreational use was weighted significantly heavier for this study because the market expansion, the impact of the policy, the availability of marijuana and just, that comes with recreational legalization is just so much greater on the level of intensity than the other policies that a change to recreational legalization was actually weighted heavier. And next we have, the study decided that there was a 2-year minimum for a policy to have an impact, which created a window of 2012 to 2016 for policy changes to actually occur. And we'll actually go into that more in the next slide. So to talk about the dependent variables, we had 6 interval dependent variables, which were measured by calculating the percent increase and decrease in rates of each variable from 2013 and 2014 to 2018 and 2019. So these 2-year selections are where the 2-year window and the 2012 to 2016 window for measuring policy change comes in. More 2 years or more before 2013 would be considered the old policy. And then any change up till 2016, which is 2 years before 2018, would be considered when a new policy could actually be implemented and have an impact in that second 2018 to 2019 time. So that leaves us a window of 2012 to 2016 for a policy change to occur. The data was taken from the NSDUH, the National Survey on Drug Use and Health. So let's talk about the tests that were performed. We actually have interval data for the IV and the DVs. The IV is interval because the coding system of 0 to 8 is large enough that you can make it interval data or consider it interval data. And so, this study conducted linear regression analysis. We calculated for p-values, t-values, adjusted R-square, B coefficients, and descriptive statistics. The most important thing to note is for the P and T values, a 90% confidence interval was used instead of 95 due to a limited sample size of only 50 states plus the District of Columbia. So now let's discuss the results. For 5 of our hypotheses, we had to fail to reject the null hypothesis. You can see the P and T values there are just did not meet the qualifications for statistical significance. Yet there was one hypothesis, abuse or dependence in the past year for ages 26 and up, that was statistically significant. So we could reject the null hypothesis. And you can kind of see the data, the p-value here. The t-value that's above the 1.645 limit, and the coefficients, the adjusted R-square, and the descriptive statistics. And you see a negative skew here. You see a relatively large standard deviation, and then you see that the mean is actually greater than the median. And along with that negative skew, we would expect a slightly positive relationship to occur within our data, and that's shown here. So what this shows is that for every for every unit increase on that scale of liberalization, you would see a 1.624% increase in rates of alcohol abuse or dependence for ages 26 and up. So now to discuss the conclusions of the study. First of all, there was no statistically significant relationship between the independent variable and 5 of the dependent variables. This might mean that maybe differing opinions on substitution versus complementary use are all somewhat valid, right? Because if there's no significant relationship between the marijuana liberalization policy and the rates of alcohol, binge drinking, and abuse, then maybe there are outside factors, whether it be cultural, regional, whatever it may be, that impact the type of use. Abuse or dependence for age 26 and up were the only statistically significant relationship. And this actually makes some degree of sense because by age 26, all marijuana policies would be applicable to an individual, right? So recreational legalization, typically you need to be 21. In many medical states, you need to be 18 years old. Decrim would apply to you as an adult by that age. So the legal market would be available to you at all levels by age 26. Also, abuse or dependence in the past year is a longer term problem than binge drinking. And addiction, as we know, can result in polysubstance abuse. That's not saying that everyone who identified with this has an addiction, but some may. And so using different substances and having different substances becoming available, that would kind of make this positive relationship make sense, that marijuana, further use and liberalization may feed into that abuse. That's just, a possible explanation. The study, though, does have limitations, had a small sample size, and conducted in a short period of time. But researchers should conduct similar studies in the future when we have more data over a longer period of time. So the reflections that I have about this study are that relationships that we think exist might not actually exist, and that performing statistical analyses is essential in determining whether these relationships are real. So using non-existent relationships between policies, like some proponents of liberalization might do, and their impacts to promote certain public policy it can be dangerous and should be avoided in debates and policy application. So that's my study. Here's the work cited. And thank you so much for listening.